Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Gary Common Council's Planning and Development Committee meeting. We have one agenda item this evening. For present, we have our Council President Linda Barnes Caldwell representing the 5th District. We have Councilwoman Marion Ivy representing the 4th District. We have Councilman Dwight Williams representing the 6th District. He is here but not in the meeting. He's coming in now. 2nd District Councilperson Dwayne Halliburton, and at-large Council Member Kenneth Wessington, and myself, Planning and Development Chairman, Councilman at-large Darren Washington. Tonight we have an ordinance approving the 2026 police. All right. Sorry about that. Ordinance 2026-16, an ordinance amending chapters 103, 107, 121, and 123 of the Municipal Code of the City to a unified development ordinance. We have Ms. Corey Sharp presenting this evening. I want to say before we start, thank you for bringing this to us, because in light of a lot of things that have happened from a legislative standpoint, you guys have done an excellent job in bringing this document up to date. And excuse me, is that the planning?
This is Dr. Sylvia Martin.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You don't have glasses on, and your hair is usually in the bun.
When you change the hair.
I thought who was a new, I said, we have a new employee? Yeah, okay. Welcome, doctor, for being here this evening. You have the floor, Ms. Sharp.
Thank you. Thank you, counselors, and good evening. Dr. Martin and I are here today to present to you a unified development ordinance. This is a complete replacement of our existing zoning ordinances, and that includes, at a minimum, our subdivision control ordinance, our land use ordinances, and the airport district ordinance. Dr. Martin and I are going to walk through the first part of this ordinance. It's a long document. You have it in front of you. It is here in front of me in case you have very detailed questions. Tonight, we thought that we would give you an overview of the land use districts, and then the next time we meet, we thought we would get into the details of development standards. We will be flexible, of course, if you want to cover it all tonight and power through it, but we are planning on a half-hour presentation and then for question and answers. This is not our first stop. We actually have been working on this code for a year. We have met with stakeholders across city leadership in the community and reviewed our code extensively, and then looked at peer cities to look at other codes. We've taken this process all the way through the Plan Commission. They have brought it to you with a favorable recommendation. So just a little bit of nuances before we get into the actual code itself, because the zoning code doesn't cover a lot of things, and I want to make sure that there's a balance in understanding. We build the zoning code so that we can have regulations around our land use and the development standards. It does not address directly walkability, job growth, economic development, equity in housing, environment, technical standards. These things are a result of good code. It is not something that is actually written into the document, but it is a result of actually acting out the code that leads us to best practices in our community. So I'm going to start out just by introducing, and then I'm going to turn it over right now to Dr. Martin. She's going to go through the first couple sections, and then I'll close us with the last bit of sections. I'll leave this here for you.
Good evening, everyone. As was mentioned, I am Dr. Sylvia Martin. The objective of this code was for us to bring our code into the new era, aligning standards with the land use and the development that we seek to produce within this beautiful city. At the core, this update is about creating consistency. It ensures that zoning is no longer reactive, but intentional. It allows us to guide development in a way that protects neighborhoods, supports economic growth, and strengthens the industrial use of our beautiful land. The residential districts started off from R1 residential 1, to residential 7, which left so much ambiguity in between and confused a lot of individuals as they read through the code, leaving our constituents, our developers, at a loss for understanding what these regulations do. So for us, we moved into a more conducive era, and we now have districts from R1 to R4, still encompassing all of the structures, but making it more simplistic and understandable so that those outside of the zoning and planning office will be able to interpret, implement, and align with the regulations that exist. As we move into our districts, we have our R1. R1 is designated to protect low-density, single-family neighborhoods. These are our stable, traditional residential areas of the city, where the focus is maintaining character, minimizing disruption, and preserving quality of life. In our R2 district, it allows for moderate density through the introduction of duplex housing. This creates a transition between strictly single-family neighborhoods and areas that support a slightly higher population. It provides flexibility without compromising the integrity of the surrounding residential area. R3 builds on this by introducing small-scale multi-family housing. This district supports housing diversity and provides opportunities for more residents to live near service corridors and amenities. It is critical for this component to address housing needs while maintaining compatibility. Our 4 district represents higher density residential development, including large multifamily housing. These areas are strategically located near commercial corridors and transportation areas where higher density is appropriate and suitable. What is most important about this structure is that it creates a clear progression. Under the previous code, residential districts lacked consistency, and transitions between different housing types were often misconstrued and abrupt. This led to a conflict between use and uncertainty in development. The new system established a step-based approach, ensuring that density increased gradually and logically across the city. We move into our business districts. The business districts were previously organized in B1 through B5, and now we have conduced those to B1 through B4. B1 is more of your neighborhood mom and pop restaurants and local businesses that serve multi-neighborhoods. These areas accommodate.
Hey, doctor, let me stop you for a minute. She is on page 50 in your packet if you want to follow along in going through the different districts. Sorry about that, doc.
Nope, it's okay. My ultimate goal is to give a clear understanding of what these codes mean so that when you're reading further on in your ordinance, you'll be able to have the definition in comparison to the regulation.
All right. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay. These R2 areas are general commercial uses that serve multi-area neighborhoods. Then we have our we have our B2 areas that serve a broader scale of mom and pops, but more of these large unit business types. And it accommodates larger retail and service businesses and typically located in key corridors. B3 introduced a regional scale distribution use that supports economic activity that extends beyond the city and includes larger operations that require more space and more infrastructure. B4, which is a significant shift from the previous code, is now designated for automotive and specialized commercial uses. These are higher intense activities that require careful placement and the separation from residential areas and downtown corridors to minimize the impact. Under these provisional zoning codes, commercial districts were not clearly defined. These often resulted in incompatibility with development, but also incompatibility with the use type. Being placed too close together in areas that could not support them, or placed in areas that impacted residential units, was a detriment to our code as a whole. The updated structure provides clear distinction between levels of commercial activity, ensuring that development aligns with both the physical environment and the market demand. We will now shift into our manufacturing district. Our manufacturing district is still organized in the same legacy code, where it is M1 through M3. M1 is intended for light industrial use. These include smaller scale operation with minimal external impacts, such as technology-based, manufacturing, or limited production facilities. M2 allows for general industrial use, including warehousing, logistical centers, and moderate scale manufacturing. These are areas require appropriate infrastructure and bufferings to ensure compatibility with our surrounding use. M3 is designated for heavy industrial activity. This includes large-scale manufacturing and high-impact operations. These uses are essential to the city's economic base, but must be carefully located and buffered to protect the surrounding area. Previously, industrial zoning did not clearly distinguish between level of intensities. This created challenges in both planning and enforcement. The updated system introduced a clear hierarchy, ensuring that industrial use and industrial uses are placed appropriately and that their impacts are managed effectively. All across these district types, the most significant improvement in the updated ordinance is the introduction of clarity and structure. The new zoning framework established a logical progression from low-density residential to high-intense commercial and industrial use. It eliminates ambiguity, reduces conflict, and provides a consistent base for decision-making. This also strengthens compatibility. By organizing districts based on intensity and function, the ordinance ensures that transition between uses are gradually appropriate. Residential areas are protected, commercial areas are strategically located, and industrial zones are properly separated. In addition, the updated code reflects modern land use patterns. It acknowledges how people live, work, and interact together, rather than relying on outdated assumptions. This allows the city to better support redevelopment, attract investment, and plan for long-term growth. I will turn it over to Ms. Sharp, who will go through the remaining portion of our new zone.
Thank you. Dr. Martin talked about the clarity of the code, and a lot of times that's for us internally from a staff standpoint. Currently, our code is a series of words on paper, and every single time we have to get into that, we have to discern what is the appropriate way to answer a question. We have restructured this new code to be table formatted, so anybody can look at a table and then see in M1, the building setback minimum is 50 feet. We've eliminated a lot of words and tried to be very concise in these tables. Dr. Martin went over our core, our legacy zones that really shape the far majority of our city. I'm going to touch on some new districts that are creative, best practice, and allow for flexible use while maintaining development standards. The first one is an entertainment district. This is starts on page 57 in your book. This entertainment district is meant for like movie theaters and other bowling alley might be an example of what an entertainment district is. We try to be distinct in commercial business activities versus entertainment where you're drawing people intentionally out for special events. So that's this entertainment district. As we look through our code and going into the next section, we have a brand new district called Destination District. This is on page 61. This title, Destination, is coming straight out of our comprehensive plan, where we started to highlight areas in our community that are destination driven. We want them to be mixed use. We want them to be anchor institutions. We want them to be a variety of uses that support that anchor institution. So we have written a new code that's called Destination Districts. It is by far our most flexible district. Yes, Counselor?
So, excuse me. So the sixth district has Indiana University, Northwest. So I'm guessing that's part of one of the destinations?
That is a destination district.
So what are we looking at to drive residents into that district? To housing and entertainment? What are we looking at?
Well, because we're zoning this as destination district, we will have the capability to make that decision of what supports this anchor institution to be able to thrive. And it's not just IUN, it's, Methodist Hospital is also a destination. Traditionally, you might have called this an institutional district, but this code will be flexible in order to allow for business growth and economic development solely around IUN, and making sure that those businesses and residential units are there to support the growth and stability of IUN, for example.
And also, just to tap on your question, because I think I'm gravitating to where you're going. So it gives the developers and the individuals that want to come in that area a little more ability to build those different drivers to bring them there. The code will allow for these areas to be driven by the type of development to bring people to that district, whereas the setbacks would have been a little different if it was just residential. Now you have a little relief from your setbacks, and now you can sit up a little closer because you want the frontage just like a business. So that those type of regulations will be flexible in these districts, allowing them to do a lot more of things that wouldn't be able to be allowed because across the street is a residential.
So have we designated an anchor in each district?
Not currently. So I think the ultimate goal is to let the market drive zoning and the regulation. So as we continue to go through and we update the map, that's where the portion of us identifying these locations. So the map becomes the next portion that will pinpoint these destinational areas, and that's why that's over there for the ending part.
Yeah,
Well, when
so
I say anchor, I mean, like, for instance, the convention center and the casino, is that the
that'll be a
fifth district?
fifth district, and that is a destination. We
Right.
haven't gone through and correlated future uses with council districts. But as an example, I can easily say yes, because building on what Dr. Martin said, is each of our parks is a destination.
Right.
So parks would be, serve as a destination district.
It is not necessarily anchor, it's just an example
Yeah.
that you use, like, for the second district. Right now, you probably will be looking at Methodist Hospital,
That's right.
but not necessarily the anchor in the future, depending on what comes.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions by council members? Councilman Ivy?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep going if you.
Go ahead. Keep
Okay,
going.
next district is mixed use. This is a best practice that came about several years ago, probably a decade ago, that really allows for our parcels to have multiple uses. First floor retail, upper residential, as an example. So we have two mixed-use districts. One is our downtown mixed-use district, and then the other one is neighborhood mixed-use. But it's pretty self-explanatory. We try to address this mixed use in the sense of we want to create a district and not just a mixed-use parcel. And so we have language in here that says the mix of uses may be on the same parcel, adjacent parcel, or same block. meaning the district has a mix of uses. Because we may have a developer that wants to do 4 flats, but it matches the density of this district. Well, next door it can be commercial. So we're trying to blend those two things, that it just doesn't need to be a single parcel, it can be across the whole district. And it's the administration, Dr. Martin's job to determine, do we have the right mix in that area?
And just to tap on the mixed-use area, if you drive throughout the city, you can see historically, we have a lot of the mixed-use structures that exist going straight down Broadway with the upper and the lower. So the foundation for the mixed use wasn't defined back when the code was created in 1991, but you can see the forming of this evolution of mixed use was already in existence in our scheme of the city.
We had PUD, planned unit development regulations, in our old code, but we have updated it to be much more stringent on what can be a PUD. We can't treat a PUD as spot zoning. Spot zoning is where you come into a neighborhood and you say, I want to change this one parcel into something else, and we're going to use PUDs in order to get around that language. So we're much, PUDs are, yeah, give me a second. Planned unit development is 137, is the page. On page 126 is, 136 is a brand-new district too, railroads. Railroads are private parcels. They're not public right-of-way. And over the course of my tenure at the city, I've had several questions about, can this sign be located on the railroad parcel? And we had no way to regulate what is allowed on railroad parcels. So we've added railroad as a land use so that we can begin to regulate safe management of those, they're not public right-of-ways, private right-of-ways, moving people in and out of our cities and transport. I'm going to switch into overlay districts now. And you can see the map over there to the side. This is an area where we have a baseline zoning. Everything that we've just talked about, the residential, manufacturing, those are baseline, foundational zoning. When we have overlays, we're adding additional regulations on top of that baseline. So we have an overlay district for the airport, and we worked with the airport in order to write a code that creates safe flight patterns for them moving in and out. It's obviously a huge economic driver for our community. We want to continue to protect that asset. Along the same lines, we've created regulations involving environmental aspects like solar, wind. We've created wellhead protection districts. That's not something that we currently are regulating. And then we have a floodplain overlay district.
So I would like to tap on the floodplain piece, because if we know historically from the code that exists that a lot of the parcels are zoned floodplain. Floodplain is not in nature a zone. It's always an overlay because it sits on top of the regulations. So we've kind of corrected that marginal error where those parcels now have their foundational zone, and then they are identified as structures that are within a floodplain, which will assist residents as they're buying, as they are having appraisals on their lots that are floodplains, and it puts that information available to them before they buy. So that's the significance. It is not a zone, it is an overlay, but the current has it as a zone.
Return it, Megan.
Okay, I know that we've covered a lot tonight, and I think we're actually almost up at our 30 minutes, but I did want to touch on a couple things before we close and open it up for broader discussion. we're talking about the code, the words on the paper. We have created a lot of new districts that you just learned about. We need to have a map then that shows what those districts, where they are. And so Dr. Martin and our team has been working on updating our zoning map to align with these new districts. And we have this presented in front of the Plan Commission. We have started the public hearing process. We are going to be having a neighborhood forum where we're going to, you know, have a coloring exercise of how we're going to communicate what parcels should be what, because this really is a delicate exercise of what should be a single-family small lot versus a single-family large lot. We can assess that very easily from the county assessors and looking at the lot widths. That's easy. But what's hard to designate is what should be a 2 to 3 duplex zone or a 4 to 19 apartment. Traditionally, Gary's neighborhoods have a 4 to 19 unit in the middle of a block that is single-family residential. And so we're going through these areas and making sure that we have the right codes designated to that. So this map, it will be over the next couple months, the summer, okay? So that's the next step. Our next step presenting to you are development standards. So the next time we meet, we'll cover the criteria that every single project that says, yes, you have to have a development plan. We're going to go through what people have to submit in order to get approval for Plan Commission. We're going to go through signs, landscape, which we don't have today. We don't have a landscape regulation. We're going to go through parking, fences, lighting, the new one, animal standards, and some other regulations, and we'll hone into those more detailed. But happy to answer any questions that you have around the land use districts themselves.
Questions by council members?
No, great job. Thank you.
Any other questions? Excellent job. I think, I know Councilwoman Mary Brown would be very pleased with this because you literally have gutted the city and pretty much set a proper foundation for future development. And so the zones, everything, and how you're doing this is the perfect plan. This will last to many generations, the work that you're doing now. Other than that, I don't have any questions. We have Mrs. Kirby has a question. Can you come to the mic and ask your question or make your comments?
I love simplicity. So I think there's some good things that might come out of this, but I do want to warn people that truth lies on the bridge between theory, that's words on a page, and practice. So live on the bridge, if you would, please, council, live on the bridge. You can't do anybody wrong living there. I came to a zoning meeting last week, and I asked a question about saturation rate for R2. Now, I don't know in my neighborhood when R1 became R2. No idea, but I know that I have probably 4 bed and breakfasts in one block. How many is enough? I don't know, but I think there should be if you're going to protect citizens who live there, that is something that I don't care if it's a law that you're going to be fighting downstate. That's one that should be fought for people who actually live there to have a say in what happens in their neighborhood. That's self-determination at its best. So, great for a new zoning, but in my question, in trying to find the answer to my own question so I don't have to burden anybody else with not knowing, if I don't know something, I want to try to find out myself. When I called zoning, they told me to find the answer that I couldn't find, but if I needed help, then it would cost me $50 an hour. And I'm sorry, I want you to hear that, because this is practical. I'm just trying to find an answer. And it shouldn't be something that's hidden, and it shouldn't cost me anything to find out. I'm going to find out from Dr. Martin. She was glad enough to give me, so I can find out the 7 requirements. She's telling me that there's some kind of statute that we can't figure out a saturation rate for R2, for bed and breakfast.
So your time is up, and
Thank you.
they're here, and you can talk to them more. So thank you for your comments. Any comments, respond?
Sure. The petitioner is actually not referring to R2, but to short-term rentals. At our BZA meeting this last week, we had a number of short-term rentals. And we are regulated by state statute, as you know, in regards to short-term rentals. We also, because of state regulation, cannot set a saturation rate. We can't say there's only 5 in one neighborhood or 5 on one block. The state law will not permit us to do that. So when we deal with short-term rentals, we deal with them through special use. And Dr. Martin has a criteria, the 7 points, as you're all familiar with, that is set up in state statute on the criteria against special use. And then Dr. Martin has also started to establish minimum criteria that we are addressing through conditions, which you have also started to become familiar with.
Okay. Dr. Martin, at a later time, we probably can have you come and talk specifically towards short-term rentals, because I think a lot of people don't understand what happened in the legislature regarding short-term rentals.
I do agree. And also, just to address what the constituent stated, what you're requesting was a zoning verification. So
Dr. Martin, talk in the microphone, because on Facebook, they'll be able to hear you.
Okay, is this better? Okay, so that is a zoning verification. So I think it's just a misunderstanding of terminology. If you were calling in reference to information for BZA or PC, then that information is widely given to you. It's not hidden or anything of that nature. I think the compliance is for developers who want to buy a property and they want to know the background and the regulations of that, and that is what you're referencing to. But any of that information is always freely given, and like I told you, I gave you the contact number, and we can provide it for anyone that wants any of that detail. There is not a single, everything is public knowledge and can be accessed at any time.
Any more questions about council member? If not, you have a question, Councilwoman Ivy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask, would this affect the assessments and the property taxes or assessed values at all?
Yes, in a sense. Well, no, yes, because areas that were residential may not be residential, and areas that are business may not be business. But the key understanding of this rezone that we're having is that it aligns with existing use. So what lies there is what we are trying to make sure that we keep. We keep that character, because the city has shifted into those districts. A lot of those areas that are identified as residents have more businesses in them than they have residents in them. So we have to align that with the shift. We have to align with the way that the city has taken itself. And that's what zoning should do. The zoning is not about future use. The zoning is about what exists currently, and that is why we did in-depth assessments in each neighborhood. There's 57,489 parcels in this city, and I've hit pretty much every single one of them to identify existing, to know what to align it with. So most of the time, they're at a disadvantage because they're not getting the tax base for their business because it's zoned as a resident, but they're grandfathered in, so it still will be a resident. So it's actually helping individuals who have these businesses, who are now have residential taxes that are zoned as vacant lots, and we're not getting that tax base from. It will align all of that and bring in a better understanding of what the land use exists as today.
If I may, just one more question.
Go
Um,
ahead.
The topics discussed from this large binder presentation today, will you come back for part 2 or 3 to do everything, or did we get basically the gist of what this is?
No, this is just round one.
Round one,
So
okay.
this was just the legacy, the zones, and the districts and the overlays. So those are the things that that we regulate by. Then we'll go into the design standards, and that is the nuances of how they're guided by. So we talked about what is guided, and we're gonna come back and talk to you about the standards for guiding. So that's the second part, and we have no problem with, communicating more in depth. If you needed to go in depth with these regulations, you can always give us a call. We can always set up something, just so we can flush it out. And as Ms. Sharp said, we're going to have a public forum to rezone as a city, together.
Ms. Sharp, when we met last year individually, is this a result of those meetings that we had?
No, when we met last year, we were talking about the comprehensive plan,
Okay.
which is the vision.
Yeah, this
Okay,
is
think
totally
about-
different.
Okay.
This is how the comprehensive plan is, what do we want our city to become?
Mm-hmm.
This code is how are we going to achieve that?
Got it.
It's
Thank you.
how we're gonna do it.
Yeah, this is the foundation
Yes,
of
so-
the building.
But it does align with one does align with the other, which is why they went through that direction. It went from comprehensive plan to identify the future. And in order to make that future a realization, we needed to align the zoning, so those things have the capability of existing there. Because as it stands, a lot of our visions will never take place.
So our codes are so outdated. Is this bringing it up to speed?
This brings up our zoning.
Uh-huh.
This brings up our zoning regulation. This brings up the regulation of land and how it is managed and developed. So, and it does impact codes, but in the hindsight, yes, because they would then align to this and have to shift from theirs. So,
Yeah, to build on that, I mean, we haven't covered development standards.
Comes to the mic.
Yep. We haven't covered development standards, but an example is, President Barnes Caldwell, over the course of this last year, has continued to talk about car lots, car uses. We've written a code that will limit the number of cars that can actually be on these car lots. And then code enforcement will be able to go out and say, you know what, you're only supposed to have 20 cars on this property, but you have smashed in 55
But
cars.
don't we have that already in place?
No, we do not.
We don't have that in place?
No.
Nope.
So then code enforcement has not been able to regulate these lots?
That's correct.
and which is why they have a harder time going into the legality of it all. So this code will help enforce that, but it also designates certain uses to certain areas, making that corridorial for car lots and things of that nature, and taking them from out of areas where it shouldn't be. And legal nonconforming, once they shift to this code or shift in dynamic of the structure, then whatever existed before is now gone. So if it existed and you shift it, then you have to align with what's there now.
Okay, so my district has several car lots. So then I could say that those lots will be basically cars, so that lot will be varied by the size of that property?
Yes, our new code is, and that's the perfect way to think of it, because the code is form-based. So in your district, that area is where, you start seeing a lot of those car lots like that. You can
Right.
see that as the corridor. So that is the automotive corridor going from 43rd all the way down, right? So with that being that those lots can only hold the amount of cars in which the lot size. So if you have a smaller lot, then you can only hold a smaller amount of cars. And then if the lots aren't combined, they're individual. So you can't say we're sitting on X, Y, and Z and we want to have this because we own that one next door. No, you're gonna have to go through the regulatory process set out in our design standards to bring your lot into regulation by coming to do a replat or a combine of your parcels, and that brings all of these different changes to these lots in front of us, but also in front of you, and making it public so that we can make better decisions together.
Okay. Can we schedule an individual time with you to discuss?
You sure can?
Yeah, okay, cool.
Got any more questions?
I'm done.
All right. Hearing none, what'll happen is, we'll schedule a second meeting at the council meeting next week, so you all can come back for that scheduled meeting. All right, hearing none, meeting is adjourned.